So in our part two of today's video, we had stopped at, in the part one, we stopped at the death of Khadija radiallahu anha. Khadija radiallahu anha's death really, really saddened the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to always remember her. He used to even cry in remembrance of Khadija radiallahu anha. And one day the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard a voice, and his, as the expression goes, and his ear stood up and he became alert and he said, "Who is that?" And then he said, "Is this Hala, the sister of Khadija?" And she said, "Yes, this is me." Because Hala, the sister of Khadija radiallahu anha, she reminded the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of the voice, that her voice sounded just like Khadija radiallahu anha, like her sister. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was so happy to hear the voice which reminded him of Khadija radiallahu anha. Now, once Aisha radiallahu anha, she became jealous of Khadija radiallahu anha, although she was never even married to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the same time as Khadija. But one day the Prophet was speaking good about Khadija, and the Prophet said, and Aisha radiallahu anha said, "Ya Rasulullah, you always talk about Khadija, but she was an old lady, and Allah has given you something better, as in myself, Aisha radiallahu anha." And the Prophet ﷺ, he became upset with her, and he said that do not speak like that about Khadija, because she was someone who helped me when no one else was there to help me. She was someone who believed in me when everyone else rejected me. She was someone who made me a partner in her wealth when I had no wealth of my own. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me children through her and through no other wife. So he's basically telling Aisha radiallahu anha that you need to understand your position, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Khadija what he did not give you. So the Prophet ﷺ was once sitting with Jibreel, and Khadija radiallahu anha was about to enter the room, and Jibreel said to her that this is Khadija coming in, convey to her the salam of your Lord. Subhanallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends her salam upon Khadija, and give her the glad tidings of a house in Jannah which is made of pearls, and there is no hard work and toil in it. It is just peace and repose and rest and enjoyment in that palace in Jannah. And this is for Khadija radiallahu anha. Now, after the death of Khadija radiallahu anha and the death of Abu Talib, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as we mentioned earlier, that he was so sad that it was mentioned that he did not smile for an entire year. That entire year, he wasn't seen smiling by anyone. Now, another problem that happened is that Abu Talib was the head of Banu Hashim, and being the head of Banu Hashim, Abu Talib gave him protection or a visa or a permission to stay in Mecca under the protection of Banu Hashim. But when Abu Talib died, the Prophet ﷺ did not have a protection, because the new chief of Banu Hashim was none other than Abu Lahab, his other uncle, who was his bitter enemy from day one. So the Prophet ﷺ had to now look for a new place. So he decided to take Zayd ibn Haritha, his adopted son at the time, to take him to Ta'if, another city near Mecca, to see if the people there would accept Islam and give him protection. So he went there and he met with three brothers who were the most notable chiefs of the people of Ta'if, and they responded with arrogance and hostility. Then the Prophet ﷺ remained in Ta'if for a few days, and he met with other chiefs of different clans, and none of them accepted what the Prophet ﷺ was calling them to, which was Islam. Not only that, they called upon the slaves and the children and mentally insane to go and start to harass and abuse and hurt the Prophet ﷺ. and this mob gathered and they started chasing and making fun of the Prophet ﷺ, and they started to throw rocks at the Prophet ﷺ. And Zayd ibn Haritha was trying to shield the Prophet with his body, and he himself suffered so many cuts on his head from all those rocks, and the Prophet ﷺ suffered those as well, until his feet were filled with blood, his shoes were filled with blood dripping all the way down his body. And the Prophet ﷺ and Zayd managed to basically get away from this mob, and they got out about 3 miles outside of the city, and they stopped in an orchard which was owned by two brothers, Utbah and Shayba bin Rabi'ah. And the Prophet ﷺ went in that garden, and Utbah and Shayba, they basically felt pity for the Prophet ﷺ, and they sent their slave to go and give and present some grapes and water to the Prophet ﷺ out of pity. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, when Addas came, the Prophet asked him, "What is your name?" He said that my name is Addas, and he said, "Where are you from?" He said, "I am from Nainawa, and I'm a Christian." And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Nainawa, this is the city of my brother Yunus." And Addas was astonished, and he was astonished that someone knows about Yunus from the Meccans, because Meccans had no knowledge about previous prophets. And he said, "How do you know Yunus?" So the Prophet ﷺ said that we are prophets of Allah and we are brothers. All the prophets are brothers, and Yunus is my brother, another prophet of Allah. So Addas was so impressed by the mannerisms and by the knowledge. Basically, this proved to be a miracle for him, and he became Muslim right then and there and declared his Shahada. Now, before Addas had come, the Prophet ﷺ, in his a moment of pain and sorrow, the Prophet ﷺ made a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this dua is an amazingly beautiful and eloquent dua that the scholars of tafsir, the scholars of seerah, and other scholars, they say that we cannot authenticate the chain of this dua. However, this dua is so eloquent, it is so deep, that it seems that it cannot come from anyone but the Prophet of Allah himself. And this dua is basically, he says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, "Oh Allah, have you left us to our enemies? Are you upset with us? Who are we going to complain to?" And very, very eloquent pain, and a dua full of pain and grief in there. You cannot really read that dua knowing the context behind it, understanding the words of it, except that tears will come in your eyes thinking about the Prophet ﷺ. And then one of the beautiful things that he says is that, "Oh Allah, no matter what happens, all of this stoning and insults and mockery and all of this that has happened to us, no problem. As long as إِلَّمْ تَكُنْ عَلَيَّ غَضَبٌ فَلَا أُبَالِي, as long as you are not upset with me, then it doesn't matter. If this is not a sign of you being upset, then it doesn't matter what comes my way, pain, mockery, insults, whatever, as long as you, O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is happy with me." So inshallah, I'm going to put a link to that dua in the video description. So inshallah, you can listen to that dua and try to memorize it. And people read this dua and make this dua in times of difficulty upon themselves and upon the Muslim ummah. Now, as a response to this dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Jibreel to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Jibreel came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said that, "Ya Rasulullah, with me is the angel of the mountains, in charge of the mountains. And what they have done to you, if he's waiting for your command, and if you command him, he will bring together the two mountains that surround Ta'if." So Ta'if is a valley, and this is a mountain, and this is a mountain. And he said that if you wish, Allah the angel of mountains, in charge of mountains, is going to bring the mountains together, and these people will be crushed between them. So what is your command? And the Prophet ﷺ said that I have not been sent as a punishment, but I've been sent as a mercy. And perhaps if these people do not believe, their children will be the ones to believe. And of course, that is exactly what happened. And Allah subhanahu and the Prophet ﷺ did not punish them, but rather He made dua for them and became a mercy for them even when they could have been destroyed. Inshallah, we'll stop here. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the patience that our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam showcased for us. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq to be persistent in the da'wah as we should be, like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.